It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
Look, first home buyers, I don't know the full ins and outs of what they're bringing in, but there's going to obviously be an increase of purchase price to reduction of stamp duty, plus obviously new builds. What we are finding on the ground is any properties, 1 bedroom studio, 2 bedrooms under 750,000, the amount of inquiry plus inspections out of a first open home, we're finding there's up to sort of 45 groups through an open home, which is significant.
And that is Alex Rutherford, and she is in a very desirable location in Brisbane, New Farm. We'll get back to that conversation in just a moment as we launch into another episode. Yes, with more of your property information, connecting you to the largest real estate podcast library right across Australia every morning, 7 days a week, and streaming right now on Spotify and Amazon. Good morning, Claire in Chatswood there in Sydney, a regular listener. Thank you for your kind words of encouragement with the email that you sent to us. You say that you are moving back to your family town of Perth after being married for 25 years. Divorce, you said, at your age isn't what you had planned in your 50s, but will downsize into an apartment. You say that you consider yourself lucky enough to come out with enough money from the sale of your family home to buy again. Yes, it's an issue that has faced a lot of women when divorcing, which we have covered a few times. Women raise, of course, families, often foregoing their careers. The equity and balance in a divorce scenario is often unfair, especially around the real estate outcome. And many women are simply unable to buy again, and then, unfortunately, they enter the rental property market. But it is nice to hear from you, Claire. Nice to know that you've got enough money. Do let us know how that move to Perth goes and buying that apartment. If you would like to email us, don't forget our email address is myrealestatepodcast@gmail.com. Well, it is a Monday after the weekend, which went way too fast. Look at the date. It is May the 19th. We're rocking through the month as we catch up with Alex Rutherford from New Farm there in Brisbane. And a very good morning to you, Alex. First time in 2025. Nice to have you back on the Real Estate Breakfast.
Thanks for having me.
So yes, Claire's situation there, coming out of a divorce and luckily having enough money. But as I say, many women just are not in the situation to buy again. Is that something that you have experienced with some of your clientele there in Brisbane?
Yeah, so we are certainly seeing, unfortunately, middle-aged women that are coming out of divorces or even younger than that, that are now looking at maybe buying a home and have had to sell the family home and split the equity out of the family home, which gives them, $600,000 or $700,000, which unfortunately doesn't buy them anything significant in Brisbane now. And sometimes they've got dependents of 2. So it is definitely a growing concern, and it is a dilemma definitely that we're experiencing more often than not now.
Yeah, I think the other problem is, if they need a mortgage and they haven't really skilled themselves or upskilled themselves because they've been busy raising the family, that is a bit of a problem going back into the workforce, not being able to service the mortgage.
It is a real problem because also they're trying to, still look after the children. They haven't upskilled. They're working casual hours in some regards if they have got work. It is definitely what I'm seeing, and I talk to quite a few women because I'm of that age. It is a growing number of women definitely in that sort of 35 to 65-year-olds that unfortunately aren't able to re-enter the property market.
Yeah, I've mentioned this before, there's a very good documentary. I just can't think of what it is called. It is on Netflix, and it shows you some of these women, and they're living in vans. And there was one woman, she's living in a car, was married, and unfortunately can't get onto or back into the property market. Very, very sad situation. Right, let's turn our attention to you there in New Farm and the areas that you service. In Brisbane, still got this problem of low amounts of property being listed. Now, I know that we've had some public holidays, but you'd think that that would start to shake itself out by now.
Unfortunately, we'd love to have more properties for sale, but we're still finding that the stock levels are very low. We have had that succession of very long weekends, so about 5 long weekends, and also school holidays along with that and Easter. So it has been a bit of a distraction, but the amount of buyers that are still visiting open homes are way off the charts. We're still experiencing huge numbers, but the stock levels are still quite significantly down. Good properties are selling very well.
All right, so I guess we should ask you the question tomorrow, the RBA. It has been 6 weeks, and here we go again. Where do you think that is going to land tomorrow?
Well, let's hope they actually do drop interest rates, because affordability has still been a major factor with buyers, but also for sellers. If they feel like the market's going to change gears, they actually might bring property on the market, which would be delightful for us, because there's a number of buyers that obviously have been still looking to enter the market from late last year. Let's hope and see what happens tomorrow.
First home buyers, this has been stimulated, I think, fair to say, because of the government incentives around first home buyers there in Queensland. So tell us a little bit about that.
Look, first home buyers, I don't know the full ins and outs of what they're bringing in, but there's going to obviously be an increase of purchase price to reduction of stamp duty, plus obviously new builds. What we are finding on the ground is any properties, 1 bedroom studio, 2 bedrooms under 750,000, the amount of inquiry plus inspections out of a first open home, we're finding there's up to sort of 45 groups through an open home, which is significant. The amount of offers that are coming out of that first open home is somewhere in the region of 11 to 15. Inquiry level, buyer level is very high. There's a lot of confidence within that marketplace because it is affordable, and it actually in some cases is cheaper to buy than it is to rent.
Yes, always nice to buy something and get out of a rental situation. Talking of buying, since we are in your neck of the woods there in New Farm, let's have a look at the median house price. That is currently around 2.7 million. Having a look at the median house price for units in New Farm, $936,000. Now that is up over the 12 months, 16.6%. Days on market to sell around 35 days. And interesting, if you have a look down the road at Fortitude Valley, for first home buyers, the median house price in Fortitude Valley, 4 units, $525,000. Over the last 12 months, that has seen a rise of nearly 13%. Well, coming up next, we're going to be having a look at the Queensland government's decision to shift the main Olympic Stadium and some of the opportunities for investors and what that means. We'll talk about that after this.
Stay ahead of the competition with the latest news, insights and data analysis on the Property Podcast that keeps you informed.
And right now it's time for another property tip, and we were recently talking to Madeline Roberts in Melbourne. She's joining us again this morning. Good morning, Madeline. You've got a property tip for us this morning.
Thanks, Craig. Yes, I do. So this is a tip that I would recommend purchasers who are looking to buy in fast-moving markets, such as Melbourne. This would be for you guys. So when you're going to place an offer on a property, to make your offer stand out, and obviously understanding time is of the essence, when you place your offer, having very tight clauses with your offer will often outshine other offers, even if theirs is a little bit higher with the dollar amount. they would still consider your offer perhaps better. So this feels like I'm giving away some of my top secrets, but how I would do this, for instance, is if I'm putting an offer in, it would be to have tight clauses. So what that would mean is having a 7-day finance clause and a 7-day building and pest clause, because that is obviously shorter than the standard 14 or 21 days, and it will make your offer stand out. So that's my hot tip.
It's your weekday real estate breakfast with news, interviews and predictions every morning on the Real Estate Podcast.
So Crow's Nest, it's a nice little part of Sydney. What are you sort of hoping to see for this calendar year in 2025?
Well, I think we're going to see some more growth. Now that the metro is in and it's tangible, people are loving it. They're loving the convenience, how fast it is, how quick it is and clean. On top of that, we've got so many more bars and cafes and restaurants. So we're certainly looking for more growth. And certainly as the infrastructure changes, we would expect that to continue.
And it is a Monday morning. We are talking to Alex Rutherford, as mentioned, in a very nice spot of Brisbane in New Farm. Now, Alex, following the Queensland government's decision to shift the main Olympic stadium from the Gabba to Victoria Park, development plans have been thrown into chaos, I think it's fair to say. However, precincts north of the Brisbane River, including Hurston, Bowen Hills, Spring Hill and Fortitude Valley, are now seen as new investment hotspots. The reason I mention that is that Fortitude Valley and Spring Hill, these are in the catchments of where you're representing.
So largely those areas have been sort of selling up to sort of 6 to 8 months ago between sort of 600 and 800. In the last 4 to 6 weeks when they did that announcement of where the Olympic Stadium is going to be, we have seen price increases to 2-bedroom apartments now stepping up between sort of 750 and 900. So equally Fortitude Valley's also jumping between that 50 to even up to $150,000. So it's all driven by the lack of supply, the amount of buyers, but the offers that are coming through also coming in very clean. So very minimal conditions, even cash unconditional under the auction conditions, which means once the contract's signed, the seller signs, it's done. So we are finding that is a very favourable way to buy, but it is really based on just the pure demand of the market.
All right, we'll leave it there, Alex. Enjoy your Monday. Keep the fingers crossed for, of course, a great result from the RBA tomorrow. And thank you for coming on to the Real Estate Breakfast this morning.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
We are just as addicted to property as you are. The Real Estate Podcast.
Yeah, only 104 square metres, and, every architect and engineer and tradie that I spoke to, essentially told me that what I was trying to do was too difficult. Going off grid for the sewer, so not connecting my toilet to the sewer and using my own water.
I'm not actually surprised. I think the Sunshine Coast and the Gold Coast have had rapid growth over the last couple of years, and it will definitely be a strategy that I'm sure people are undertaking, getting another investment property and moving to other states because of that.
But then often it quite pushes up the prices to a point where you negate that win that you just had with the rate cut. So I would always suggest people have a look at the market and what they can afford at the time, because that's the best time to buy. I wouldn't wait particularly for a rate cut.
Victoria experts have been forecasting a 10 to 13% property price increase on the Gold Coast for this year. You're probably seeing that in terms of the numbers that you're talking with.
Yes, that's right. We're still finding that there's also an increased interest in new builds, which of course creates a bit of a spike in prices. There's still limited land available on the Gold Coast, and some of those buyers, whether they be international, interstate or even local, looking to change through different suburbs.
From first-time home buyers to seasoned investors to breaking property news, discover the stories behind the real estate. We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.